Oh, look, thanks so much for coming along to hear me talk today. One of the, what sort of happened was, it was maybe about 8 weeks ago, and I was out and about, I think it was in a coffee shop somewhere, and I met Neil Hamilton, and he said, maybe you could, talk about something about the Jade journey. And, he said, a lot of people have learnt something or have touched Jade some way or other through the years, and they know it maybe from the 90s or sometime beforehand, but they don't actually know where it is right now. And I thought, gosh, that's true. I get people saying to me, hey, are you just a Jade shop? Is that all you guys do? Or, is Jade still around? Or, what's next for Jade? So today is just a little bit of a trip through the journey we've been on over the last wee while and where we're sort of heading to next. The one thing was, I opened this up, and this one here. I opened this up the other day, and I said, oh my God, to my design team. I think they thought I was talking at Armageddon or something like that today. But they know that I'm a big Star Trek fan. And I have been since I'm about 4 years old. And so whenever I come across, say, anything in the workplace or any leadership learning or something like that, I think of Star Trek. In particular, I think of Captain Kirk, and I think of Janeway and Voyager, sort of kind of lost in space sort of stuff. And on this journey on the way home, and kind of hard trials along the way. So in many ways, Star Trek's been going on for just a little bit longer than Jade has been. Jade's been around 41 years, and Star Trek's sort of, maybe 50 odd. And we've had different captains along the way, sometimes the same ship, sometimes different ship, lots of different sort of reinventions along the way as well. And so they're kind of a lot of analogies. So we're going to play that theme today. So I'm not going to go all the way through the story, but suffice to say, if we go over the last 41 years, and there are a lot of people in the room here who can speak much more knowledgeably on all of this than I can, but there's this really wonderful history in terms of Link first, and then in 1996 the Jade language and platform came out, and what that did to give people the ability to build ERP systems for their businesses using the Jade platform. And so there's this proud sort of history, and even you can see there 3 reinventions, if you like, or at least 2 sort of reinventions. So we're going to talk a little bit about those reinventions along the way. What is really true, if we think of Jade from 96 through to 2005, from my perspective coming into the company, I see an organization led by someone really visionary. And when I showed the slide to someone the other day, and they didn't know what the rest of it was about, and I was talking about this company that had this platform play. It was a global player. They had a product portfolio with 8 verticals in it. They were doing service as well, service products as well. And they were like, oh, well, it's, who's that? That sounds really modern. It's like, well, no, this is from back, since in 1996 through to sort of 2005. And so, there's a lot back then which is still so relevant now. Part of that journey that Jade had along the way then was around how they expanded into other global markets. And there are a couple of learnings out of that hold really true for myself and my team now, but also through NZTE. It's one of the things that we hear time and again as a learning. And we try to share these learnings to stop, to help other New Zealand companies not have to relearn it. And there are sort of 3 of them there. One is around market validation and just how important that is, and also a focus on, a really tight focus on maybe 1 or 2 markets, not trying to sort of shotgun sort of 6 or 7 all at once. And I think, Jade learned some lessons around market validation along the way. They also did some really good things with the lesson around having strong partners or channels to market. And that was a significant help getting into the US and UK markets during this time. And then the last one was one actually I was having a coffee with Gil Simpson a couple of months ago, and we were chatting about sort of learnings, and he said, the one other thing that I would have done different, and I've heard a lot of other CEOs say this as well, is that if I want to be really committed in that market that I'm going into, particularly if there's new geography, that it's a really good idea for the CEO to go and be in that market for a period of time. That's not what happened in Jade's case, but it is what's happened in a number of companies' cases, and those who do typically forge some really good success with that. So Jade went through some really good growth through the platform, through the verticals, but at a point it did start to actually overreach and fell into some trouble. And so at that point in time, we sort of started the Omega sequence. And at that point, other people came and got involved in the business, and parts of it were jettisoned or sold off, if you like, to sort of keep the ship in orbit. And during that time, as a consequence of that, the business went from a portfolio product and service sort of an offering down to really a single product kind of focus. And so, some of you will have gone through this along the way as well. And in that single product focus, that's where we saw things like Wynyard be created and then spun out, and then Jade Logistics more recently created and then spun out. And through all of that, the underlying piece of the business was the Jade product and the service around application development and support and so forth as well. And that part of the business was kind of in the shadows as these hero products are being created and launched. But we've been a little bit bipolar through the years. And by that I mean, we've never been quite clear, not since the early days, we haven't been really that clear about whether we're a product company or a service company. And we sort of spin this wheel every sort of 5 years. We go, we're product, no, we're service, we're product, we're service. So we've got these kind of cycles going on, sort of mini cycles and large cycles as well. When we think about, these days, when we're thinking about that question, we're saying, well, product is really scalable, and service not so much, but service is fantastic for discovery and finding fertile ground for products that can then solve problems. But we like things kind of binary, so so there's that tendency to sort of go one or the other. And what we've started to learn in our current form is that really we need a bit of both. It's about balance, and that actually we get strength through that balance. So each of those spin-outs that we had in terms of Wynyard and then Jade Logistics, each time those happened, that was another reinvention for the company. So things kind of turned on their head each time. And so that by sort of the end of 2017, start of 18, we were basically in our 6th iteration over a period of 40 years. And that's kind of not unusual for lots of companies, I think, who've been around for that amount of time. And it's just kind of, it's interesting to sort of look back and actually take stock and understand it. So 2018, when I joined the business, how we were was we're made up of Jade, the service business, so creating bespoke software solutions for companies, and mostly looking at really complex enterprise problems for our customers and how we could solve those. We have the Jade core system, so that's the capital Jade, which is the Jade language. And then we have enterprise applications, which are created then on top of those ERP systems that people have built in Jade. We then help them create enterprise applications on top of that. And then in recent years, more in the way of digital applications on top, and underpinning all of that is a managed service. Through all of that, we've had a couple of things on the back burner, which is our products, if you like, which is the Jade product itself, and also the financial crime products in terms of anti-money laundering or Third Eye and Investigator. And it's interesting because coming into the business at the start of 2018, it was clear that we'd really stepped away from the product side of things, and we're definitely into service, because we had no product or technology capability in the business and no product or technology strategy as such. So that meant that we didn't have the ability to scale. We had a really good software solutions business, but not a really great way to scale. So it was at that point myself and my team sort of got together and thought, well, now where do we want to go? How do we sort of want to take this into a future that's about growth? And as we sort of think about kind of loops here, because through that journey of trying to understand what is it we do next, we came to the point of saying, actually, we're going to create a business in the future. We're going to create growth where we have the service part of the business doing the discovery with customers and verticals and uncovering problems in fertile ground. And we're going to have products that then come in and actually take advantage of that and solve common problems for people. We also said it's not like we're stepping away from service at all either. Service, every time we do a bespoke development for someone, it's an experience. And that experience of doing a development together is also a product, so we need to curate that as well. So we're coming at things now with very much a product mindset, but where product means experience in the broadest sense. So if we think about this and we go back to the last time we had this type of structure to the business, that's around about a 16-year cycle. So we've sort of got a 16-year cycle, and within that we've got little 5-year cycles, and it's kind of interesting just to think of the business in those kind of terms and with that type of cadence, if you like. So what are we now? So out of the work that we've done around defining our future, one of the key things that sort of came to light was during those years when we had the hero products and we had We also sold off some of those original verticals that we had and some of those original pieces of the business. We ended up with a lot of silos, so all disconnected, that seemed to have a way of connecting, but actually weren't really being brought together to connect. And when we think about our customers and the type of problems they have, they're quite complex, so they're not usually just about managed service or just about digital. They usually require a whole lot of different parts of the puzzle to connect, because a problem in an organization usually has a value chain associated with it. And so when we thought about that, we said, actually, we need to bring all of us together. So what we've been doing over the last year is bringing all the different silos, the sort of 4 or 5 key silos that have been left as Jade, bringing those together into one organization. And those pieces of the puzzle, as you can see, are the enterprise application, well, really starting with the Jade ERP system in some cases, not all cases, but in some cases, we have customers with the Jade systems. And then we have enterprise applications on top of that, digital applications off the back of that, our products. And then we've created in recent times a really strong AI and machine learning team, which we're then bringing to those customers, those customer problems, to bring extra insight or prediction out of them, and then managed service underpinning all of that. And there's quite a nice example that sort of demonstrates where Jade is now in terms of how all the pieces of the puzzle come together. We have a customer in the UK called DB Cargo, who's part of the DB Schenker group out of Germany, so moving rail freight around. And they're an interesting customer because they've been with us for maybe 15 years or so, and they adopted the Jade system, or Jade language, to write their ERP system for their rail business back about 15 years ago. And since then, they've built this database of all their transactions, and on top of that, we've helped them create enterprise applications to add extra value and extra features to create a better experience for their customers. And then in recent times, we've created digital applications on top of that to create even better experiences for their customers. And then in the last couple of years, in fact, maybe in particular in this last year, and launched just very recently, we've taken our machine learning capability and applied that to their 15-year data set of all their train transactions to solve a problem which was kind of interesting. We didn't really recognize it as a problem until we started going through the user experience work with them. And through that process, we came to understand that there's a paradigm in at least the UK rail system that says if a train leaves 10 minutes late from the first station, then even after 5 or 10 stations later, it'll arrive 10 minutes late at the other end. And by using machine learning and looking at the historic data that we had and overlaying that with some other key data sets and calling out, I think it was around about sort of 100 parameters, we sort of narrowed it down to around about 40 or so, and found that we could predict to around about 92% accuracy when a train would arrive if it left 10 minutes late, 5 stations later, or however many stations later. And there are a couple of key things that were predictors to that. Now, the interesting thing about that is that means then it's now been built into the app for them, for their customers, and it means their customers and their suppliers now have a much better experience as a consequence in that they know when to be there ready to collect the freight or when to deliver the freight, and so it takes cost out. So it's all about creating a better customer experience using some of these new tools. So when we start to find that down, it's great to understand that we've got those pieces going on. So that is what Jade is made up of now. These are an end-to-end sort of solution for complex problems. But particularly, if we sort of narrowed that down, what kind of problems are we actually trying to solve? So what we find that we're really good at is we're very good at pulling together, helping our customers to pull together all the internal data sets in their business that are maybe quite disparate, but actually contain the voices of their customer in them in some way that have been collected over the years. So we're good at pulling that internal voice of their customer together. And then we're really good at working with them to create external voices of the customer, or paths for the external voice of the customer to come into their business. So whether that's through text or voice, through like a digital assistant like you see out there in the display area, or whether it's through the likes of IoT and data streams off sensors and so forth. Those are all external voices of the customer. So we have the ability to bring together internal voice and external voice of the customer, and then apply our UX teams and our AI predictive teams over the top of those to get those insights out for our customers to understand how to engage and retain and then ultimately grow their customers. And those are actually the types, when we boil it down, those are the problems that we solve. They're usually quite complex problems, but they're hugely rewarding because we get to see our customers, the look on their face when they get this new way of engaging and this new feedback from their customers that they've never had before, that shows that they've got real growth and real buy-in. So some of the cool stuff we've been working on lately, just to give you kind of a sense of that, I mentioned before DB Cargo. So that's, in fact, if we look at all of these, there's an element of AI playing across all of them as well. DB Cargo and using machine learning there to predict train arrivals. The next one is we've been doing some really interesting work with digital assistants like the one out there that you can order the coffee from, but some other things even more advanced than that, which will sort of come out in the public space in the next couple of weeks, which is exciting. And then Third Eye is our anti-money laundering product, and we're doing some really solid growth, quite exciting growth with that now in the UK market and shortly in Australia, and bringing in predictive capability into that as well. So all of that is interesting to sort of understand how the business has gone through changes over the years and what it is now and what its focus is. And that's really energizing to us inside the business. But a strategy is only as good as the culture that you have to actually deliver it. So a lot of our work in the last year has been as much about structuring the business in terms of what we want to sell and how we want to sell it, how we bring new experiences to our customers, as much as how do we help our people to understand new experiences and how to really connect themselves with our customers as well. So we started out on a path about just over a year ago, working through what is the purpose of the business and what's our vision and what are the values that we have. And in fact, it's that values piece has really just started to, it's taken a while to kind of work through, but that's just started to play out in the last couple of months in particular. And it's that which has kind of led to this realization about the kind of culture that we want to have and where we are right now. So maybe to give you a sense, we have about 250 people in the business, and they're spread over 6 locations throughout Australia, New Zealand, and the UK. So we've got some distance things to work through, but we've got some really interesting diversity. So we've got this real spread from baby boomers who are close to retirement all the way through to millennials and new grads, and it really is a very sort of even spread throughout that. We've got at least 15 different cultures. When we have bake-offs, we have all sorts of different food there from all over the place. So it's actually way more than 15, but it's a lot. The one thing we're not so good on is the gender mix, and we've got some work that we're starting to do there, but we're very much on the beginning of that journey. And I think for diversity and inclusion in total, when we think of diversity, we're starting to teach ourselves or learn about from others more about diversity of thinking and what that looks and feels like. And in terms of inclusion, doing a lot more work in terms of our culture and the values around what inclusion looks like. Coming into the culture for the first time in 2018, one of the things that really struck me is just what an open culture it was, or an open group of people, and also the fact that it seemed it had been a little bit in the shadows for a while. So the work we're doing now is to say, how do we grow our people? How do we give them new tools and new capabilities so they can really fly and really use that openness? So how do we get much more outward looking and connected with our customers? And through that, we're also doing a lot of learning and development work and a lot of leadership development work. So what that does is it starts to create a culture which is an engine for how we change the business. And I think when we started to think that through, we said, it's interesting, there are some pieces here about what we want to be in the future that if we lay them all out, they kind of create this picture that we hadn't really expected. I was chatting with someone the other day, and we were talking about Star Trek and Borg, and we said, actually, all these things that we want to be in the future, we kind of want to go Borg, which seems counterintuitive because Borg seems kind of bad. But actually, when we think about Borg, got a common purpose. They're obsessive learners and improvers. They are, by design, diverse and inclusive, self-organizing and holocratic, and really transparent, and on a constant search for excellence. And that's very much what we're trying to create with our people. It's part of that journey. This is the engine, if you like, that we're trying to create for 5 years, over the next 5 years, that actually sort of powers us into into, what is the next iteration of Jade, if you like. And so, that is, what is that next generation of Jade? Whatever that is, it'll be leave it off where we are now. It'll be a product and service portfolio sort of approach, balanced approach. It'll definitely include IoT as a competency. It's something we're building out already as part of that voice of customer. But it'll be cloud something, so a cloud capability beyond where we are now, so whatever that future is. And other areas we're not really clear on yet. But the main thing is that all those puzzle pieces, if you like, come together as one to actually create engaging solutions for our customers that help them to engage and retain and grow their customers as well. So that's our focus. That's where both the culture and the strategy is taking us to future-wise. And so I'll hand it over to questions, and thank you for your time.
Question number 1. How do you organise Jade internally to deal with the tensions of being both a product and a services company? Neil says tech companies are generally pretty poor at this.
Great question. So we have a very flat structure in our leadership, and that flat structure means that product and technology and delivery teams and salespeople are all very much together, creating the strategy together. So it's very much our strategy, and it's because it's ours, it's very connected. So we're a little bit like a startup in a way. I saw Sharesies the other day talking, and they had 7 founders, and because they had 7 founders with all different sort of points of view, they were very committed to that 7 staying together. So that meant that whatever they created was joined up from go. And I think we've tried to adopt that similar sort of principle in terms of how we're reinventing ourselves now. So very, very flat and connected.
Awesome. Okay, next question. How much data should a small business have before ML can be useful to them for gathering customer insights?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. One of the team out there on the Jade stand is our head of data science and machine learning, and he can answer that question way better than me. But certainly, you may think that you may not have enough data, but actually one of the things that we've found is that seldom do you use just one data set. So generally, we're adding at least geolocation or geographic data, quite often weather data, and other data sets of some other nature to it. So it's always going to be augmented in some way by other information. So you may not think you have enough, but actually when you start to think of the problems you might be trying to solve, it may be enough by the time you add in other data sets.
Cool, thank you. Okay, last one. Do you think there's a sweet spot with the ratio between product and service?
Well, yes, we believe there is a sweet spot, and that is because we've taken a focus around saying we're going to grow verticals. So, like as per back in 1996, if you like, Jade originally, we're going back to growing verticals. And in order to grow a vertical, you need to grow a number of customers in that vertical who have problems that you can solve. And as we start to learn how to solve those problems, then we get to see common problems that they may have unaddressed. And it's in those common problems in a vertical where we get to see the opportunity to solve the problem with a product, so in a repeatable way. So there's very much a sweet spot there. If you think of a vertical moving from sales through to product, it's in the middle there's a critical mass where the two very much kick over.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks, Charlotte.
Hey, thank you very much.